Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far after another big Warzone versus CDL bout of drama over the last few days. Dashy, Ghosty among others have given their thoughts on the matter. Scrappy wades into the discussion as well. And Dashy and Scrappy's main point is, look, these guys look very good when they play Warzone. And sure, they can play pretty well against the CDL guys as well. But take off auto tac sprints. How are they going to fare? Are they playing against pub kids and therefore getting an ego? What's the differences between that level of competition and what we have in the main Call of Duty League? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into. Firstly, I thought was kind of interesting. Yesterday was National Scump Day. I don't know if you guys remember Bance talking about it last year. That, you know, it's National Scump Day. Phone your friends, phone your family, tell them you love them, this sort of stuff. So yesterday was the day that Scump announced his retirement back in 2023. So, you know, National Scump Day came around again. On, of course, the day that this big patch update was meant to drop, ranked players meant to arrive, and they bottled it, you know, like, come on, it's National Scump Day, and they managed to bottle the announcement that, of course, Scump comes out with, you know, this, just looking back at some memories from his career, of course, the World Championship 2017. Wow, what a good time here, the X Games boys, back in, I guess this was COD Ghost, right, when Priestahh and Clay were on the team, of course, lifting the World Championship, and then, of course, that Dynasty roster at the time that, well, had a bit of success, if you guys aren't aware of that. There was also this, I just wanted to mention, I don't know if, as of recording, Ranked Play will be live yet, it may be, but also BPL, if you guys have been getting involved in this, I'm sure lots of you have. EasyMac has actually set up like a ranked queue in there, so you can go and you can queue up to a party of 2, and well, if you do well or you win, you can actually gain MMR, so you can effectively, we've got our own ranked play thing going on, so you know, it really is incredible what the multi-billion-dollar company can manage to do, but you know, some boys with a Discord bot can seemingly achieve something rather similar, so yeah, get involved with that if you haven't already. There's also this that's been leaked, the ranked play camo for rank 45, so pretty cool. I don't know, like, I'm not really, it's not setting the world on fire for me, you know what I mean? Okay, at least it moves. I guess it's going to be kind of interesting, but that was leaked and there was some talk about it. I wish that what they made for ranked play was just like all the coolest stuff, you know, like I wish that was the case, but it doesn't seem to be as it stands. But again, big drama going down between the Call of Duty side and the Warzone side, as is quite often the case, and it's funny how this works, right? Because as Rocker say, United against a common enemy, CDL fans during the siege, and you know, FaZe are going at OpTic, New York are going at Toronto or whatever, right? There's always some beef going down, but as soon as there's some sort of conflict between the Warzone scene, CDL fans and Warzone pros think they're better, and you know, everyone is on the same page all of a sudden. And you know, I think I agree with this assessment really. There's kind of two sides of this argument, right? Because at the end of the day, I loved the scene when, I mean, I was first getting into it back in, like, let's say Black Ops 2, when I first actually started watching, so I kind of, you know, I didn't feel out of interest exactly, but I didn't watch it so much for the next couple of years after that, then really got into it again in Black Ops 3, as you guys can probably tell. But in Black Ops 2, you guys might remember, like, the World Championship that year, and, you know, everything that was going on at the time, there was a crazy overlap at the time between the more casual scene and the competitive scene. You know, guys like T Martin, guys like Ali A, guys like, you know, Chaos X Silence or whatever, like all these old school COD YouTubers were at the World Championship, commenting on the World Championship, talking about it in their videos, and there was a great crossover at the time, and it's unfortunate, I think, that we've lost that, right? I think that it is better for the league, and it's definitely something that we need to think about going forwards, and, well, we have been thinking about for a long time, but Activision seemingly hasn't really cared, is, you know, trying to find a way to combine more so the more casual player base and the competitive player base, and there's various ways to do that. A good rank play system is certainly one of them that actually arrives on time after all the, you know, the announcements about it. That would be a nice feature, but also, you know, in the game client itself, having the, you know, the league standings and all this type of stuff and showing the league matches in the game client. You know, so many things you can do that Counter-Strike has done over the years to improve that kind of correlation. But I think it's also true to some degree for the Warzone side. Like, I kind of, you know, wish that it wasn't such a war, really, between CDL side and Warzone side. Like, I think in some ways, we should have some sort of common objective, but maybe, you know, maybe that's not the case, because at the end of the day, Activision are going to fund some sort of esports competitions, and the CDL want it, and CDL players want it to be the CDL. Warzone players, I guess, want it to be Warzone funding, right? So maybe there is understandably a bit of conflict there, but also there's conflict in terms of how good these players are, right? Nowadays, there's probably more money if you're, let's say you're a challengers level player, there's more money for you to go and grind Warzone, play against, you know, pub kids or whatever, and win some Warzone prize money than do so so in challenges, but at the end of the day, lots of these guys, they want to be considered the best in the world. They want to get to that level, and they feel like the way to do that is to play challenges, get into the proper Call of Duty League, and there's much higher prestige, I would argue at least, and many people think the same way in doing so than going to Warzone. So anyway, there was this podcast, the Drop Shot podcast or whatever, and these guys are talking about how it takes way more skill to be the top Warzone guy than to be the top CDL guy, and X gives some interesting perspective on this, saying that from a Warzone perspective, you watch the guys play, because they're playing against pub kids, they look like absolute gods amongst men, whereas in the CDL, while the players are very skillful, because they're playing against other guys, you can't quite see from the eye test how good the pro players are compared to like your average player, which I think is true to some degree. I don't think it's fully true. Like, I still think you can watch, you know, an aBeZy or a HyDra or, you know, even a Dashy with his shot, or certainly a Shotzzy. You can watch their point of views regardless of who they're playing and think that, you know, they're incredibly good at the game. But sure, when you play better players, you're going to kind of look worse. But I think this is also true for like every single sport in some ways, what Aches was saying there. Like, let's say basketball or just any sport really, if you're playing against worse players, you're going to look unreal, but you can still appreciate the skill of, like, you know, a Messi in football or whatever. This is actually a problem I think Formula 1 has, because you can't really see how good the drivers are, because, you know, they're just driving a car, right? You don't see the inputs and everything, you just see the car go around the corner. So it's difficult to appreciate, like, the dominance of an individual driver when, you know, the car takes so much precedence in the spotlight. So, you know, I don't think it's a massive problem in Call of Duty, but I definitely understand what X is getting at there. But understandably, lots of reaction to this, and I thought this is pretty funny. So this guy says, biffle would do 10 times better than 40-year-old Playstar and the other washed-up pros gatekeeping their spots. No wonder nobody watches the CDL. Clenchie responds to this and says, yeah, why is he coming at me for? Like, come on, what are you doing? Calling him 40 years old, I thought was pretty wild, but we saw lots of other reaction to this. Octane was saying, you know, these guys shouldn't be able to have access to the podcast equipment. They talked about it on the flank last night, of course. Even Joey Nubsy says these guys' heads would explode. And to be fair, like, have they really, you know, watched that much competitive COD to be commenting on this way and basically saying that, you know, there isn't as much skill, you just hold an angle. And, you know, I don't want to go into all the weeds, you know, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but understandably, there's been a lot of reaction to this. You know, Method said the following, Bance actually had the following to say as well, agreed, having the choice to spawn in versus Biffle or Insight, I know what I'm choosing, so just some funny tweets. But Dashy also gets on the wave as well here and says, these pubs are really starting to get to you guys' heads, which I think is probably a fair analysis. There are occasionally, let's say, World Series of Warzone tournaments where it actually is just, you know, top Warzone guys versus other top Warzone guys, but, you know, usually that's not the case. You're just playing against, you know, some dad who's come home from work, he wants to put his feet up, played a couple of games of Warzone before, you know, he's got to put the kids to bed or whatever. Those are the type of guys that these Warzone pros are slamming, and yeah, that seems to be Dashy's perspective. Ghosty and also Shotzzy, they talk about this as well, and kind of give their argument, and even Scrappy commented on it, on what they think is the reason why they would like to see more evidence as to how good these players might actually be, because in fairness, a lot of these guys are using, let's say, auto-tactical sprint to move around, which makes sense when you're playing Warzone, but it definitely does add some advantage to your movement, which isn't necessarily the case when it's banned from the Call of Duty League or in challenges.
You think Biffle could do pretty well in the CDL?
Of course he could.
Hey,
a lot of CDL players always think they can't. I constantly see that argument. CDL players are always like maybe Biffle could compete, but he wouldn't even be close to a top player in the league. And it's like, they think he doesn't have the skill set. I'm sorry, I'll never agree with them, and I'll never fully understand their reasoning. But I think being the best Warzone player in the world is way more skillful than being the best CDL player in the world. Maybe that's a hot take for CDL players, but they act like there's so much strategy. You sit there and hold an angle and wait for some guy to run around the corner. How do you think Biffle would not be able to do that? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. And
you literally sit there and hold an angle.
Yes.
It's not that hard. So much more thought goes into playing Warzone, so much more strategy over the length of the match.
This guy thinks best Warzone player in the world is way more skillful than being the best CDL player. Let's hear this.
Oh, that's an insane clip, by the way.
Said that some random or whatever?
All I know is you could put in the Hall of Fame of Warzone and put in, like, your subjective opinion of the 4 worst CDL players of all time, and the 4 CDL players are whooping their ass.
If I just, like, I don't even care about that. I just want to see, like, I'm not even trolling 90% of these Warzone kids play without auto attack. I want to see them use double tap. I want to see if they're still moving.
Bro, I promise not. Like, obviously the good ones are, but, you know, a lot of them ain't, bro. ATS actually does all the work for you, bro.
Bro, I use auto attack in Warzone, and I feel like I'm Shotzzy. I'm not even trolling.
Bro, you literally flick the stick forward and you're in super flow. You're just actually zooming.
That's the other thing. One,
Like they got radar
I know
on in
people say
Warzone.
like it's easy to get used to, but like, bro, when you run ATS for your whole career playing COD and these CODs, and then you come to something that is like you're not gonna be even remotely the same, like in movement wise. Two, all right, they're not gonna come into the league and join a top 5 team. So the teams that they're gonna be, respectfully, they're gonna be dog shit, and like you can't win by yourself. Like this isn't worth. You can't 1v4 teams. It's not gonna happen. So like. You got to start from the low and just grind. It's too much for like, they can't just come out right now. And it's just not real. Like, if we're going to be honest, it's not realistic. It's not, and it's realistic. It's not realistic for a CDL player to go to Warzone right now and start dominating. It's just not realistic.
So obviously we know which side of the argument these guys are going to be on. And I thought Scrappy's take was interesting that, like, these guys, let's say Biffle, he's not going to walk into a top 5 team, right? So he's potentially going to be, you know, struggling down there on some of the worst teams in the league. And also the ATS discussion is an interesting one. I definitely think that some of the top Warzone guys are skilled enough that they could take it off, use double tap to run, double tap to sprint, whatever. And they would still be fine. But some of them probably wouldn't, right? Some of these guys probably are like auto tac sprint merchants. I think that's definitely the case for some of these players, right? So very much into your thoughts in the comments below. It's always a drama that comes up from time to time. Just before we close out though, I wanted to look at this. So as COD League Stats put together the current search and destroy standings in the Call of Duty League. Actually, this has kind of snuck up on me somewhat, how good the Subliners have been, just because they took down OpTic, right, in those couple of round 11s they played during the first series. So I think the feeling was, oh, like OpTic, they've got no ice in round 11s, and you know, Subliners only just scraped over the line there. But actually, they've won every search they've played. Like, this is the record of the respective teams so far. Still, on some of these, a kind of a small sample size, but it's still worth looking at, that this is overall search and destroy, and you can see last 3 series, last 5 series, and on the current roster, what's going on, which of course is, you know, pretty similar, apart from Carolina, which have changed their team. But I guess we'll just look here at the left-hand side. So, Ravens have the worst search record. They're 1 in 5. The only one they won, of course, was, you know, Game 5 against Vegas that won them the series, but it ain't looking so good for them. Every other team has at least won some. I mean, Toronto have been surprisingly not poor in the game mode, but Scrappy hasn't been great exactly, and they've been doing most of their damage in the respawn mode, so I think more to think about there, really. Average differential is still in the positive, because they did slam Surge that time, 6-0, right? But Surge are still 5-2 in Search and Destroy. Miami are kind of even Vegas. I mean, Vegas started well, right? They took down Minnesota very emphatically early on. That's quite quickly turned around. Boston, OpTic, they're kind of middle of the pack here, but still, the differential for OpTic is actually the 3rd best. So in terms of average rounds won to average rounds lost, they, you know, do that more so than every other team that isn't FaZe or Subliners, basically because they lost a lot of round 11s. So, you know, you can look at that 2 ways with OpTic. You lose a load of round 11s, oh, you've got no ice, but also, you know, you're just losing the 50-50s, and when you win more comfortably, right? So it kind of goes both ways, but I don't think OpTic will be, you know, too concerned about being negative in Search and Destroy for now. Surge have been, again, Surge are 5-2, but their rounds differential is actually lower than OpTic's or Toronto's. I imagine not helped by when they played Toronto and got 6-0 on that Karachi. FaZe are 5-1, and then the Subliners are 7-0, which is almost like a bit of a silent 7-0, you know what I mean? Because, what was it, FaZe got to like 12, 13 searches in a row they won last year during that, when they won Boston Major 2, stuff like this. Like, that was breaking the record. Maybe they got to 14 search in a row, something like that. Anyway, it was up there, definitely. So Subliners are already at 7, but to be fair, they play Toronto, and that's going to be a tough match this weekend, I think, and then they'll go to the Major, and they, you know, it's unlikely they'll maintain that, but it is pretty impressive so far that Subliners are yet to lose a Search and Destroy. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.